Buenos días, amigas y amigos. En esta lección hablamos de formar el futuro con ir más a. That's right, my friends. In this lesson, we're learning about forming the future using this expression ir a. So, in Spanish, you're going to have two different options for expressing something happening in the future. Just like we do in English, we might say, I will go to the store versus I am going to go to the store. They both are talking about events that happen in the future. Well, we're going to learn just one of those today. We're not going to learn how to say I will go to the store. Instead, we're going to learn how to say I'm going to go to the store. So that going to is the expression, or to be going to is the expression we're going to be working on today. So before we get to that, let's start with a little review of a couple of things we've learned over the past couple of lessons. First of all, let's talk about sentences that have more than one verb. So you see this example sentence up top, Yo quiero despertarme a las 10. You remember what that means? Hopefully you're saying, I want to wake up at 10. And then the next sentence is very similar. Yo tengo que despertarme a las 10. What's it mean? I have to wake up at 10. So we've learned how to use quiero and tengo que in conjunction with other verbs. The first thing I want to point out is notice that quiero and tengo are conjugated, whereas the verb that comes after, despertar, is not conjugated. The AR is still there on the end. We've still got the infinitive. So that's one of the rules that we've learned. But also we learned that quiero doesn't need a que, whereas tengo does need a que. And sadly, that's something that we have to memorize. So that happens sometimes. Yo tengo que despertarme a las 10. The que doesn't really translate into English. It just is there as a function in Spanish, but really doesn't have any translation into English. And that happens sometimes, and it's going to happen today as well. So just be aware that, that we're going to have a verb and then another word that doesn't translate into English. So just be prepared for that. Then look down beneath the asterisks here. Yo me quiero despertar las 10. Now we've taken the me and we've put it in front of quiero, which this is illustrating something we've discussed previously, that reflexive pronouns go before conjugated verbs or they go after and attached to infinitives. And either one is correct. It's completely up to you. Call it artistic license if you want. And we see the same thing illustrated in the last sentence there on the page. Yo me tengo que despertar a las 10. I've got to wake up at 10 o'clock. Okay. So let's have a look at what we're going to be able to say in Spanish. Something like this. I am going to wake up at 10. I am going to wake up at 10. Now notice, I am not waking up right now, and it's not 10 o'clock right now. It's going to be something happening in the future, and I'm using this going to indicate a future action. Well, the word to go in Spanish is ir, ir. Now look down here in the bottom sentence there. Voy a despertarme a las 10. What word there do you suppose is ir? Any guesses? It is the voy, V-O-Y. That means that ir is not a regular verb. All right, ir does not translate as os, e, imos, is, en. It has its own unique, did I say translate? I meant conjugate. It has its own unique conjugation, that is this. Voy, vas, va, vamos, vais, van. Okay? Voy, vas, va, vamos, vais, van. You might want to take a moment to pause this and write down all of this information on this slide because this is very important. So let's go over what I've got here. First of all, we've got the ir here at the front, and you're going to have to choose the conjugation because this is the first of two verbs. All right? The sentence, I am going to wake up at 10. You've got the going is one verb, and then the waking is the second verb. So we're going to conjugate the going verb, and that's this right here, ir. Then we're going to follow it with this word a. And again, this a doesn't really translate into English. Just think of it kind of as you did with the K, with tengo que. Well, here it is yo voy a. And then the infinitive comes next because it's the second verb. You're not going to conjugate the next verb, which in our example sentence was despertarme. Despertarme. You hear that AR still on there? We've got the infinitive. So I am going to wake up at 10. Yo voy a despertarme a las 10. And we've used this construction here. Very important construction. So let's look at some other examples. My mechanic and I are going to wash our hands. All right, so the sentence is below. Mi mecánica y yo vamos a lavarnos las manos. So here we've taken this whole are going to wash, and in Spanish we're using our ir a infinitive. Vamos a lavarnos. And I've got that nos attached onto the infinitive, but remember, the nos is not part of the verb. It's its own pronoun that just kind of like gloms onto it. So another structure we could use here is put the nos in front of the conjugated verb, which you see illustrated below that. Mi mecánica y yo nos vamos a lavar las manos. Alrighty, let me get my little dude over here. Okay, the next sentence. The lawyers are going to feel sick. Well, let's use our ir and a again and follow it with the infinitive to feel. Los abogados, what conjugation are we going to need for are going? Lawyers, I'm seeing third person plural. So van a sentirse, because we're going to use the infinitive here, because it's the second verb out of two. And then enfermos, the lawyers are going to feel sick. Or we could put the reflexive pronoun as we see on the very bottom, los abogados se van a sentir enfermos. So let's look at some practice. Let's start here with ones that I find easier, just because I think it's easier to go from Spanish into English. So, el mesero se va a acostar. What do you think it means? Take a moment to think it through. This one is the waiter, el mesero, is going to lie down. Se va a acostar. I put my se in front of the conjugated verb in this example. I could have put it after acostar if I wanted to. Número dos. Mis primos se sienten aburridos. What do you think this means? My cousins feel bored. They feel bored. Se sienten aburridos. All right, número tres. Tu hermana y tú vais a ser doctores. You and your sister, or your sister and you, are going to be doctors. Número cuatro. Yo no voy a ser tu amigo más. This sentence I find kind of funny. Yo no voy a ser tu amigo más. I'm not going to be your friend anymore. All right, now let's try some hard ones. Here we go. You ready? Take a moment, pause this, and write down what you or how you think you would say these, because we're going to go through these together. I am going to lie down. Let's start with that one. I'm going to show you the answer here in 5, 4, 3, 2. Two options. You could say, yo me voy a acostar, or you can say, yo voy a acostarme. Either one of those works. How'd you do? Let's look at number 2. They are going to wake up at 6. Answer coming at you in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ellos se van a despertar a las 6. Or, option 2, ellos van a despertarse a las 6. Both of these are acceptable. All right. Y número 3. We are going to brush our teeth. La respuesta en 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Boom. Opción 1. Nosotros nos vamos a cepillar los dientes. Or, opción 2. Nosotros vamos a cepillarnos los dientes. So let's take a moment to review what we've discussed in this video quickly. First of all, we're going to use ir a followed by the infinitivo, the unconjugated verb, to talk about events in the future. There is another type of future in Spanish that has its own separate conjugation. You'll have to learn all new conjugations. But we're not going to learn that today. This one's a lot easier to use, and it'll at least get us talking about some future items, future actions. Remember that the verb ir is highly irregular. The conjugation is voy vas va, vamos vais van. Make sure you're giving me a nice B sound on that V. Voy vas va, vamos vais van. It sounds really good for when we gringos and gringas do it that way. So don't forget about the V's as a B's. All right, número tres. Let's see, using ir a to talk about the future is no different from what we have learned in our lesson más de un verbo. When two verbs are working together in a sentence, you only conjugate the first one. And then last, reflexive pronouns behave exactly the same as we learned in our last lesson. They go before conjugated verbs or after and attach to infinitives. Gracias por su atención en esta lección. Hasta la próxima. Adiós.